At exactly 2:29 a.m., on November 21st, 2025, the Black Sea was silent until 7 shadows skimmed across its surface. They weren't birds, they weren't waves, and they certainly weren't mistakes on a radar screen. These were Ukrainian AN-196 Lyuty strike drones, flying just 13 feet above the water so low, their wingtips nearly kissed the waves.
Ow.
Built from radar-absorbing composites and barely larger on radar than a seagull, they were invisible, unstoppable, and heading straight toward the most heavily fortified airspace in Russia's arsenal, Western Crimea. In less than 20 minutes, these 7 drones would erase a Russian Ka-27 helicopter, destroy 4 major radar systems, blind an entire S-300 and S-400 network, and leave Crimea's western flank completely exposed. But the shocking part wasn't the destruction, it was how Russia tried to stop the strike and failed at every single step. Dozens of missiles fired, thousands of cannon rounds unleashed, orders screamed through command centers, and yet, not one drone was hit. What happened next would reshape the entire air defense map of the Black Sea. For years, Russia has sold the world an image of Crimea as an impenetrable fortress, layered shield of radars, missile systems, patrol aircraft, and early warning stations capable of detecting anything approaching from hundreds of miles away. But on this night, Ukraine pushed a system built on decades of Soviet doctrine to its breaking point. Every layer long-range, mid-range, low-altitude depended on a network of radars stretching across the Atri and Kucha regions. These weren't just machines. They were the eyes and ears of the Russian Navy and Air Defense Command. Lose them, and the entire western flank goes blind. And yet, in this exact window of time, while Russian ships mistook the incoming drones for sea clutter and air bases, scrambled to get a Ka-27 helicopter airborne, a single PD-2 reconnaissance UAV quietly mapped every Russian sensor, every radar sweep, every heat signature. By the time the Lyuty drones were within striking distance, the entire battlefield had already been digitally dissected, target tagged, and uploaded through encrypted Starlink channels.
Well, Russia didn't know it yet.
But the strike was already decided. Every drone had its target. Every radar had its weakness identified. Every second that passed brought Crimea closer to something few believed possible: total, humiliating, irreversible visibility loss. This was the night when the fortress wasn't breached, it collapsed from within. At 2:29 a.m., 7 a.m., 196 Lyuty strike drones slid across the Black Sea like black needles slicing the waves. Flying barely 13 feet above the surface, they were almost invisible to radar teeny signatures swallowed by sea clutter. Ahead of them, Ghost 4, a PD-2 reconnaissance drone, quietly mapped Crimea's western defenses from 2,500 feet. Its infrared sensors marked heat, movement, and electrical activity, converting the entire coastline into a digital battlespace. Every radar dish, every antenna, every patrol route appeared in perfect clarity. The system then pushed all of this data target layouts, vulnerability points, attack vectors through encrypted military Starlink channels. Within seconds, all 7 strike drones were synchronized. Each drone received its designated kill order, peeled away from the formation, and accelerated toward its target. Meanwhile, aboard a Russian Baikov-class patrol ship, faint radar returns flickered in and out. At first, the crew dismissed them. But by the 4th sweep, they knew something was coming. As the drones crossed into the Panchiris 1's engagement zone, Russian operators prepared for an easy kill. These systems were designed to intercept cruise missiles and jet slow. Low-flying drones should have been trivial. But the moment they opened fire, the Panchir entered a nightmare it wasn't built for. 5 high-value missiles launched in rapid succession, streaking into the sky on semi-active radar guidance. And everyone missed. The drones weren't flying like normal aircraft. They were executing a Doppler notch maneuver, sliding through the radar beam at an angle that made their velocity appear invisible. When missiles failed, the Panchir switched to its last-ditch defense. 2 30mm autocannons roared, unleashing 25,000 rounds per minute. Tracer streaks filled the night like burning rain. But the drones were too small, too low, and too fast. Every round hit the water harmlessly. In under 40 seconds, Russia's premier point defense system had exhausted its options and accomplished nothing. Inside Kucha Air Base, alarms blared. A second wave of drones appeared on tactical screens, and Russian officers panicked. Their only countermeasure was the Ka-27 helicopter warming on the apron, Crimea's primary asset for detecting sea-skimming drones. If it got airborne, Ukraine's entire operation risked immediate exposure. Commanders shouted orders. Get the Ka-27 up now. The engines roared, rotors spun, and the aircraft began rolling forward. But it never had a chance. Lyuchi drone number 1 dipped low behind the ridge, accelerated, and slammed directly into the helicopter's fuselage. The warhead punched through the fuel tank and ignited instantly. A vertical fireball erupted, tearing the rotor mast apart and engulfing the radar cabin.
Ow.
Shrapnel shredded nearby structures, setting off secondary fires along the apron. In under 20 seconds, the base's only anti-drone aviation platform was gone. For Russia, this wasn't just the loss of a helicopter, it was the loss of their last early warning lifeline. The moment the Ka-27 exploded, the remaining Lyuti drones pivoted toward Crimea's radar grid. Drone number 2 struck first, diving straight into the massive 96L6E radar tower, the brain of the S-400 system. The explosion ripped through its antenna modules, instantly shutting down all target designation for nearby launchers. Drone number 3 climbed briefly, then dove into the dome of the Nebos V long-range radar. Its composite shell peeled backward as molten copper burned into the transmitter core. High-altitude detection vanished in 1 second. Drone number 4 hugged the mountainside and speared into the P-18-meter band radar, snapping its rotation shaft and killing the region's low-altitude surveillance. Drone number 5 followed, piercing the LRAA-10 navigation radar and destroying the internal switching cabinets. In less than 3 minutes, 4 critical radar systems were wiped out: long-range, mid-range, low-altitude, and air nav. Crimea's western flank was no longer defended. It was blind. Inside the S-400 Kuban command post, control screens began blinking red one after another. First, the 96L6E link disappeared. Then Nebo, then P-18, then LRAA-10. Within seconds, every coordinated input feeding the S-300 and S-400 systems vanished. Launchers dropped into passive standby mode, completely unable to identify, track, or engage targets. Operators tried switching to backup channels, manual tracking modes, even infrared verification, but nothing worked. The entire western Crimean surveillance layer had collapsed. Across Sevastopol, Gardsko, and Kucha, frantic status reports came in. No radar data, no altitude tracking, system blind. Russia's Ministry of Defense couldn't admit publicly what had just happened. But ASINT analysts quickly verified the destruction using thermal footage, satellite imagery, and Ukrainian HER video. For Ukraine, the implications were enormous. Fewer drones would be needed for future strikes. Russian confidence in their own defenses was shaken, and Crimea, once advertised as an impenetrable fortress, was now wide open. In the hours after the attack, smoke drifted across the Atri ridgelines, and the once silent radar stations flickered with dying embers. What had been one of Russia's most fortified surveillance zones was reduced to shattered towers, melted cores, and the charred remains of a Ka-27 helicopter. But the true impact wasn't measured in wreckage, it was measured in what no longer existed. Crimea could no longer see. Its long-range radars were gone. Its low-altitude detection was crippled. Its air navigation systems were silent, when its S-300 and S-400 launchers sat blind, deaf, and helpless. For Ukraine, this strike wasn't just a tactical victory, it was a message. A demonstration that even Russia's most advanced defenses can be outmaneuvered, overwhelmed, and destroyed by precision, planning, and ingenuity. And for Russia, it was a warning. The fortress they relied on is no longer impenetrable. The next strike won't just be undetected, it'll be unstoppable.